Today, we are going to discuss the most important aspect of your online presence that no one else talks about. But that changes now. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Content Creators Unite, the show where we discuss all things content creation. So if you want to learn how to grow your business using your blog, newsletters, ebooks, and more, you are in the right place. I'm your host, John Clements. Our guest for today's episode is Maxwell Ivey. So Max is known as the blind blogger, and he has been educating business owners about accessibility ever since starting his first website using carnival rides in 2007. And at the time of that, the state of accessibility was so poor, he actually had to teach himself how to code HTML just to get online. So he believes achieving more accessibility will require showing business owners specifically what's in it for them. He shares his knowledge and experience through writing, speaking, consulting, and podcasting on both sides of the mic. And he's here today to help us change accessibility and inclusion from a regulatory challenge to a competitive advantage. So Max, welcome to the podcast.
All right. Thank you, John. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast, and I appreciate your dedication to, fighting through the tech stuff so that we can actually record it. So thank you for that.
Awesome. No problem. Yeah, a bit of background. We tried to record this once before and we had tech issues galore, but I think we're in the clear today. So Max, I've given a bit of an introduction to who you are, but can you just share us a little bit about your background and how it is you got into doing what it is you do?
Right. So I started my life as part of a family of carnival owners, but I also knew eventually I was going to lose most, if not all, of my vision to retinitis pigmentosa. By encouragement of friends, family, teachers, and scoutmasters, I graduated from a traditional high school and college. I'm one of the few blind Eagle Scouts, and I was lucky enough to be part of my family's business, operating a traveling carnival in East Texas until my dad died in 2003. By 2006, we were pretty much out of the business, and I needed something to do with myself. So the only thing I knew how to do was to sell our used rides. I figured I could help other people do that. And at that time, it was really the beginning of people selling stuff through the internet. And people told me I had to have a website. So I had to figure out how to have a website. And at that time, there was what you see is what you get, which obviously wouldn't work for a blind guy, or learning to code. So I learned to code. And I've did all the other things you have to do, like recruiting clients and setting fees and writing copy. People were impressed by that and asked me if I would share more about being a blind entrepreneur, which I did as the blind blogger at theblindblogger.net. And over time, it's just happened that more and more people have been interested in my knowledge about accessibility. And I would say probably about 5 or 6 years ago, when the people at the Vision Aware Peers group, which is part of the American Foundation for the Blind, asked me to start writing for their blog. But I think it really took off in March of 2021 when Alex Sanfilippo, the owner of Podmatch, asked me to help improve or build accessibility into his new website, Pod Lottery. Now, just as an aside, Pod Lottery is not a gambling site. It's just a fun way for podcasters to help each other grow their ratings and their reviews, so more people will listen to our shows. But he wanted it to be accessible out of the box. He knew me from sharing the stage at Podfest in 2019, which is often how you get your first gig. You get hired by people who know you. And after we did Lottery, then he had me work on Podmatch, and I'm continuing to be an ongoing consultant to podmatch.com. And then in 22, the people at AudioEye reached out and asked me if I would share my experiences on accessibility for their website and teach people about inclusion. And from there, PHP Architect and Reviewed Magazine also came along and said they would like me to write for them. And then most recently, AudioEye asked me to be one of the hosts of their podcast. I'm now a paid podcast host. I'm going to have to figure out a better way to say that because that's a tongue twister. But, basically I got pulled into this as my best friend likes to tell me, Max, this isn't where you planned on being. That doesn't mean you have to be mad about it. So it took me a while to accept that I am this person who's an expert. And one thing that I recently had a big epiphany over what I do is when I accepted the name The Blind Blogger, I was one of the very few people with a disability that was open about their disability online. And I didn't realize how big a stigma our community made that out to be in the early days of the internet. But here I was, this guy, I was open about my vision loss. And because it had been used as a nickname for me on LinkedIn and Facebook, it became my brand. It's been a very successful brand, thank goodness. I'm glad I said thank you and decided to run with it. But over time, we've gotten to where people are more open about their disability. They're more open about talking about their disability. Accessibility is becoming a bigger subject and more demand in writing, speaking, and podcasting, which is why I'm on your podcast. Thank you. So it's basically, I got pulled in this direction, and I had 15, 16, 17 years of experience working in various businesses. So it's kind of been one of those things where I've been doing the work forever, but didn't realize I was doing the work and becoming an expert and becoming a trailblazer until just recently, when people who I look up to as being leaders in my community said, Max, you do realize who you are, don't you? So now, I write about it. I speak. I host a podcast. I love doing podcast interviews and answering people's questions. I love having conversations. I've learned over time that it's easier for me to answer y'all's questions than it is for me to clean up what happens if y'all guess. So,
Very true.
That's where Greek mythology comes from, is people were, okay, what caused this to happen? And you end up with Zeus and Apollo and Hercules. So, so that's how I got into what I'm doing, with the help of Alex Sanfilippo. I accepted this and really started focusing in on it. And now I am the guy behind the Accessibility Advantage, which I feel is my unique take on things, because my dad raised me to believe that if you need to ask for help, then you should ask for help. And so he taught me from an early age never to be afraid to ask for help and never be afraid to ask for opportunities. And that's carried through with my work very nicely. It's one of the many lessons that he taught me over the years of going up and down the road with him, moving a small carnival. And as a result, since I'm used to approaching business owners in a positive, non-threatening manner, explaining my need as far as what I want and why I want it, and even giving them the opportunity to come up with better solutions than I have in order to accomplish a particular task, it becomes a conversation, a collaboration, and it goes from a business owner thinking, oh no, this blind guy's going to tell me I have to do accessibility today, and if I don't, he's going to sue me out of business. But that ain't the way I approach it. And I feel like that's why I have such good results, is I understand how hard it is. My websites, I'll be honest with you, my websites, none of them have ever been accessible by any of the standards. But when you're building your own website, it really makes you understand the challenges of the other person. So I feel like I have great empathy for designers, creators, website developers, because I know how hard that work is. And I know when you tell them that we're going to add accessibility on to all the other things they have to do, that's hard. And I feel like, again, we have to approach business owners from a more positive viewpoint than we have been. I mean, think about this. We've had the National Rehabilitation Act for 50 years. We've had the Americans with Disabilities Act for 30 years. We've had various regulations within the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Justice. But yet here we are in 2024, fixing to be 2025. They demonstrated flying cars in Paris last month, and only 3% of the internet is accessible.
Yeah, and actually, if I could jump in there, there's a couple of things that you said that I want to key in on. First of all, I really appreciate your approach. So in a former life, when I used to work in the corporate world, I was an auditor. So my job was to go tell people they were wrong. And so just like you have to learn how to do that in a winsome, respectful way that's more like a we're on the same team kind of thing than the other people who did auditing who I knew who, it was always a power game. And that's not the way that I wanted to approach it ever. So the ability for you to do that, I think, is wonderful. And then also, to your point, like 30% of websites are accessible, and there are millions of people who would love to visit your website, but they can't because it's not accessible. So if I'm let's say I come to you and I say, Max, I have this website or I sell this product, and I want to make sure that my website is accessible to everyone. Like, what is the first steps you would give to someone? Like, how would you even start that journey?
Yeah, I love how you teed that up for me. Thank you very much there.
You're welcome.
And it's 3%, not 30%.
3, okay.
Yeah, some people think it may be as high as 5, but that would be the absolute most liberal estimation of how much is accessible. And since new content is being added every day, it's hard to even stay where you're at, much less move forward and make it and have the percentages of accessible content go. So I start with a few things that aren't necessarily in the guidelines for accessibility, because I feel like if people start with these 3 or 4 things, it can help them before they even get to the nuts and bolts parts of accessibility. So the first thing is focus on the most important thing of your website. What is the purpose of your website, your blog, your podcast? Why do you want people coming to this particular location? And focus on that, and then eliminate anything that doesn't have to do with that. You want to create a process where people can quickly decide whether or not you have what they want to buy. They can decide the quality of your merchandise or the quality of your information if you're a coach or a consultant like myself, and they can quickly navigate towards making a purchase. Now, I know we all love to have stuff on our website that helps them spend more money, and that may be a cool thing to do after I've finished buying the first thing, after I've managed to get through the checkout process or managed to get through the process of booking a conversation with you, if that's your goal. So focus on the most important thing. And that's something I believe most webmasters would tell business owners as well. It's just not something usually associated with accessibility. After that, you want to have a simple design for your website. Pretty much anything that a webmaster will tell you would make your website prettier, more attractive, keep people on pages longer, has a potential accessibility issue with it. You know, whether we're talking about hover cards or modals that pop up to grab information before I can continue to your website. Lots of those things have potential accessibility roadblocks in them. And for that matter, lots of those things will even cause roadblocks to people who don't have a disability. So yet another reason to keep the design of your homepage and your other pages simple. And then take a minimalist approach. This is the third. There's one more. Take a minimalist approach. The fewer links, images, text that there is on your pages, the better. Because you see, when you use adaptive technology, whether it's somebody like me that's almost totally blind that uses a screen reader, or somebody with some vision that uses screen magnification, or people that have limited motor control, say they are paraplegic or quadriplegic, and they use mechanical switching devices, it takes us longer to navigate through information to find what we want to get to or what you wanted us to come and find. So the less information per page, the easier and quicker we can navigate that and get through to the next process and not get tired and frustrated and quit and think, well, is there somebody else who has a website that would be easier to navigate that can sell me the same stuff? So minimalist, if something doesn't need to be on your homepage, then it doesn't need to be there. And every item you can remove makes the navigation process quicker. And then the fourth thing that's part of the general advice I give people is design for keyboard access first, because people using adaptive technology like myself, we don't generally have access to a mouse or to the mouse functions. We can sometimes simulate mouse functions, but that's not reliable. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten to the end of the form and just wasn't able to click that button to subscribe or to send them my money, because that last button was requiring an actual mouse click, which I could not replicate. So these are things that I would talk about as far as general items. Is there any of those 4 that you would like to comment on or ask me more about?
You know, actually, the last one you said about, I never even thought about this. Again, this is why I love having you on, because these are not issues I have to think about. They're issues you deal with on a daily basis. So it's a wonderful perspective. So I never thought about I could be losing out on growing my email list or selling a product because my button has to have a mouse click. I never thought about that.
Right. And that's the thing with accessibility. See, most of us that take a positive view towards inclusion, we understand that lack of accessibility is not a vendetta. You didn't set out to create a hardship for me. It's just not something you think about because you don't have personal experience with that. So I appreciate that you can recognize that so quickly. And when I talk about mouse clicks and when I talk about creating forums, it seems like about half the time I'll get a story from the host or the person I'm talking to about, I was working with this particular client and they were losing thousands of dollars because their form wasn't even accessible to people who are able-bodied, much less people with disabilities. And so I encourage people, visit your own website. You wouldn't submit a book without proofreading it. Visit your own website. Find out how much stuff is there that doesn't need to be there. Subscribe to your own email list. Navigate through your own forms. That's one of the things that most people do when they hire me is they create an email address for me that's different than the one we communicate with, so that I can start out by signing up to their business if they have some sort of login information that people have to use. Because just think about this: what if just giving you my name, email address, and entering a password is not possible? Then I can't even get into the game. I can't even ante up for the first deal of the cards because that particular part. So most people, the first thing they want me to do is test their login information if they have one, test their forms if they, because everybody's got forms, because the forms are the lifeblood of our business, whether it's connecting with people with information for a passion project or, wanting that email us so we can hopefully get them to buy stuff from us down the road. So I tell people, test your own stuff. You may not be able to test it for accessibility, but if you test it just for usability, just to, as you're going through it, think, if somebody's doing this on a mobile device and they're tired or they're in a hurry or they're in bad lighting or their internet signal isn't as great, would they be able to navigate this form and get to the end in a reasonable enough period of time that they won't walk away from my cart in the middle of the process? So test your own stuff. As I mentioned before, you wouldn't submit an ebook without proofreading it. So that's what I would tell people as far as that part of the website. Now, one other thing that most people do know about, but most people are doing it wrong, has to do with alt text for images. And when you do your alt text, that's where you add a string of text that can only be read by people who have screen readers or other adaptive technology. And those strings of text are indexed by the search engines, so people can find your businesses with them. And I'm finding more and more companies are adding the alt text to their images, but the problem is they're not describing their images. Most images on websites have the name of the business, the name of the product, the name of the service, but they do not tell me or communicate to me the message that was intended when they created or took that photo. And I like to tell business owners, you spent a lot of time, energy, and you put a lot of thought into creating the images that represent your business or your products or services. You need to communicate those as well as you can in words to people who can't see the images, and of course to the search engines who can't see the images either. And so the search engines will index between 150 and 180 characters. I can't tell you which ones are which, but that's the range. So I encourage people to use the first half to tell me what the image is. Describe the people or pets or animals, the product, the background, the clothing, the lighting if possible. Try to communicate the message that you intended when you took the picture, and try to put yourself in the place of somebody who can't see the image, which is, I know, difficult. But whatever you can do to help me better understand that image is going to make me want to take the next step. And most people's images are connected to links. They're connected to buttons. They're connected to videos. So if you're one of those people who still doesn't add alt text, anything that image is connected to will not be found by somebody using a screen reader or some of the other adaptive technology. It just won't appear.
That, yeah.
It's not there. It's not. It isn't as if it's not there. It's just not there. And so if you don't have the alt text on your image, and your image is attached to the button that you want me to press to start the process of buying a shirt or a book, then I don't see that. My cursor goes right on past it because it ain't there.
Yeah, and I like that. I appreciate, again, I appreciate your perspective so much, because now you're getting back to like why the alt text is there in the first place. Yes, it's partly there for SEO and for search engines, but it's also probably more importantly there, again, for accessibility. And just one tip I can give people as well is, it used to be the case that SEO experts said alt text is a great place to stick a whole bunch of keywords and do keyword stuffing, but that's not. They're not telling you to do that anymore, which I think is the right answer. So the right answer is what you said. Just
right.
describe the picture.
I'm willing to split the difference. Hey, I am willing to split the difference. I understand that for business people, accessibility is hard. It's something that they have to make themselves think about. So, hey, let's say there's 150 characters. Okay, give me 100 characters of description, and then you can put 50 characters of keyword stuffing in there. How's that sound?
That sounds like a good compromise. Well, the other thing I wanted to bring up that I really appreciate your perspective on is you tied accessibility to usability, and I love that. So, like to your example, go through your own website, your own forum, and if someone is busy or it's dark outside or they're in a car, can they still navigate that? I love that approximation of, if you get that right, then you've probably gone a fair bit down the accessibility road without even knowing.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, they balance each other out. If you're focused on usability, the odds are you will eliminate a lot of issues around accessibility. If you're focused on accessibility, then you're going to improve the user experience of everybody else who visits the website, which is one of the three things I talk about when I'm explaining to business owners why they should care about accessibility in the first place. And the number one is accessibility improves usability. And some of the things that are out there for accessibility have really improved lives. For example, originally only blind people had talking GPS. And we had to purchase it for ourselves, and it ran somewhere between $300 and $700 for a kit that you could carry around with you that would give you GPS directions in an audio form. That's now part of everybody's phones, and it now is a safety feature because you've got hands-free. You don't have to look at the screen in order to find out what your next turn is. So that's one. One of my favorites that I recently learned is when I like to invert text. I can't see the text anymore, but back when I could still see it, it was always easier on my eyes and easier to detect the letters if it was white on black instead of the usual black text on a white background. And I recently found out that offering people the option of inverting the text colors on your website makes it easier to see the text in extremely bright or extremely low light. So, think about somebody that's hanging out at the pool, the beach, the hotel. These people, they can actually use your site better because of something that's in there for accessibility. One other thing, when I talked about minimalist and simple design, again, that really helps people who are visiting your site on mobile devices or who are visiting your site in less than ideal conditions as far as their personal situation at the time. And so I'm glad that you made me pause and talk about that, because it is I'm even starting to think that we should look at accessibility and usability as a seesaw or a teeter-totter, because improving one seems to improve the other, regardless of which way you come at it,
Yeah. And again, that's, I enjoy constructing win-win situations. That's what I want to do for my clients. I think that's what you want to do with your clients. Like we're not at a battle here. We're trying to get better together. So I love that perspective.
Well, in fact, we cannot succeed without being together. And that's another thing that I feel like our community, the disability community, doesn't do good, anywhere near good enough, which is, if we're ever going to achieve accessibility and as a result achieve inclusion, It's going to take the designers, the developers, the business owners. It's going to take people who have disabilities. It's going to take a coming together of the advocacy groups, which I'm honest enough to admit that many times advocacy groups do not agree and do not work together on issues that they should have obvious understandings in common on. That just happens. Along with the available technology, including the artificial intelligence. And of course, government regulations, because I don't believe government regulations will get us there on their own, but they have to be part of this big pie that has 5 or 6 slices. We have to get everybody to come together and collaborate if we're ever going to achieve true inclusion, whether we're talking about in person or on the internet. And so I'm going to be the last person who's going to say, it's all your fault or it's all your problem.
Yeah, that just doesn't, and here's the kicker I learned, even if that's true, it doesn't help. So
exactly. Yes. I love that. You have obviously had some counseling or some coaching or something.
I have, during COVID, there was a whole lot of emphasis in my family on mental health. So that was a blessing out of COVID that we didn't maybe expect, but that's when we got.
Well, I think COVID did, one thing COVID did, which is this is aside, but this is an important thing for business. One thing COVID did for millions of people is it gave them the opportunity to stop hustling, to stop scrambling, to stop pushing, and to think, to feel, to try new things, to actually spend time on things they've wanted to do for years, but never had the time to do. So COVID really did a lot of people a lot of good by giving them the pause. Now, it did cause a lot of stress in people who already had mental illness issues. But I agree with you that gave you and your family time to address mental health. It gave a lot of business owners time to really think about their business instead of just being in their business every day. So
yeah, absolutely.
Forcing yourself to take time away from your business, it is not easy, but there are things that you can do during the course of your day. One of the things I find really helps business people is every one of us has something we do during the course of our day that's repetitive, that's drudgery, we could do it without thinking about it. And so when you have those kinds of tasks, instead of not thinking about it, instead of zoning out or whatever, use that time for meditation or for some real thinking about who you are, where you want your business to be in the future. So if you can't force yourself to take a day off, and there's another place where Alex has been really trying to help me because he's a great example of somebody who almost never works on the weekend. I mean, there are times where if you're the business owner, you really don't have a choice. We both know that, but it's his goal not to work on Saturday or Sunday. I'm not there yet. My goal is to take one day a week, regardless of what day of the week it falls on, and make that my I don't do nothing day. But most of the time, what happens is that because my day and my business has different aspects, different tasks that I have to do on any given day, I tend to be able to take time during the middle of each day. So since I get rest time, since I get fun time during my work day, and since I'm doing things that I really enjoy doing, it's hard for me to then set aside a whole day. But if you can, an hour, think about school. I don't know about nowadays, but when I grew up, you had recess, and business owners need recess. You need a paper airplane, you need a yo-yo, you need a coloring book, you need something in your desk that you lock the door and nobody knows about. And for 15 minutes, you just don't think about nothing, but you do that. And if, it could be you have a book or music, or maybe you're lucky enough to have some exercise equipment in your office or where you work, but give yourself recess,
Yeah. So what do you do for fun then? What do you do when you're not working?
Well, I listen to audiobooks and I just replaced my stationary bike. I'd been without one for 6 months because we couldn't find one that would carry my current weight that wasn't a recumbent bike. And I do not care for I don't care for the the ability of a recumbent bike to hold up over time the same way I do with a more traditional stationary bike. So it took us a while to find one. And then we found one and we ordered it and it came here. It was very easy to assemble. No, I did not assemble it. I have blind friends who could have assembled it, but I ain't one of those people. I got blind friends that can build cabinets for you if you want them, but I ain't one of them. So it turns out we're going to have to look for a different seat for it because it's got one of those old butt torturing seats from the 1950s on it. So for now, I'm riding it with a towel, but we're looking for a new seat. But I like to listen to a book, and sometimes it's personal development, sometimes it's business, but sometimes it's just good fiction. Right now, I'm reading 6 Types of Genius, which is a really good book. If you're looking for a book to help you as far as you're having problems in your business with your emotional investment in the business, like you're feeling burnout, it's a great book on. It has some great advice, and I can't tell you the author of it right now, but I love his storytelling. You don't even feel like you're reading a self-help book or a business help book, and it really gets to the heart of things that add energy, things that drain energy, how to figure out which ones are in your business, and then to target those to get somebody else to do them, whether that's paying somebody or maybe finding someone in your current business that has the skills to do the things that you don't enjoy doing. So it's a really good book, and I like to do that. I like to listen to old time radio shows. I listen to my sports teams lose because they do that a lot.
I feel you. Mine do too.
I'm a Texans fan, and I'm
sorry.
I'm really disappointed. I know, man. I'm still mad that we didn't make that trade for Zach Martin at the trade deadline with the Cowboys because our offensive line is horrible. I mean, our offensive line reminds me of the Giants' offensive line, and they've been statistically bad for a decade. Who do you pull for?
Oh man, well, I'm not into football, but I'm into baseball. So I like the Mariners, who just missed the playoffs.
Yep,
I like the Rockies.
We were responsible for that.
Yes, they were. I like the Rockies, who are terrible.
Yeah, but I love the Rockies because the Rockies are a perfect example of a struggling business. I mean, they have the worst conditions of any business that they compete with. Nobody else has their problems. So they can't even piggyback off of somebody else's solutions. I mean, because when I'm going to try to be quick here. When pitchers pitch at altitude, the ball doesn't break the same as it does at sea level.
Correct.
So their pitchers are constantly under mental stress because they have to throw one way in Colorado and another way everywhere else. And they're the only pitchers who have to do it. So they've got nobody they can talk to, which kind of leads me into something else. If you don't have a community yet, start building one because that community, even if it's just 2 or 3 people, can be very helpful when you're going through hard times or even when you're going through really good times. I have one of my best friends. I've known her forever. Her name's Adrienne Smith. I call her my blogging mama because she taught me everything I know about blogging and relationship building through blog commenting. And she's one of those people who I can count on her to build me up when I'm not feeling confident in my abilities, when I doubt the value of what I'm doing. I can also count on her to kick my butt and say, Max, stop reading your own headlines because you are not as good as you think you are right this moment. She's a very honest woman who has no problems telling me that I've outgrown my pants temporarily. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you gotta have someone like that. So I like what you said about community. As we wrap up, if someone wants you to join their community and get to know you a little better, where can people go to learn more about you?
Right. They can go to theaccessibilityadvantage.com. They can send me an email to Maxwell at theaccessibilityadvantage.com. I hate making people go through contact forms and visit my website just to say hey or howdy. And I'm Maxwell Ivey on all the major social media platforms. And I want y'all to know I'm not one of those people that you have to be ready to hire, book, or buy something from to talk to. I really do appreciate new people and conversations. the truth is some of the best things that have ever happened in my business career started by having an unplanned conversation with no agenda with somebody who had the courage to reach out and go, I think I should meet that person. So build your community, never be afraid to ask for help, be there to offer help to others who haven't gotten as far in their business as you have. And the last thing I like to leave people with, because I find that business owners really have trouble with this, they have trouble asking for help or opportunities. And while we were here to talk about accessibility, this is something else that's very important to me. Think about how you feel when you do something nice for your wife, your girlfriend, your neighbor. It makes you feel good. If you let somebody else do something for you, they will feel good about it too. So when you refuse to ask for help or when you refuse to ask for opportunities, you rob the other person of the joy they would have gotten from you. So don't make people's lives harder by trying to do it all yourself. Build your community, ask for help, show gratitude. And I'm at theaccessibilityadvantage.com.
Oh, what a great way to end it, Max. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And to my audience, if you enjoyed our discussion today, I know I did, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. We bring in the most amazing guests and just learn from them, and it's wonderful. So be sure to subscribe, follow, do all that. And with that, I want everyone to have a great day. We'll see you next time on the Content Creators Unite podcast.